The room went silent when my son's blood hit the black marble floor, and the Mafia King lifted his head like he had just heard a ghost call his name. A second before that, everyone in Blackwell Hall had been laughing. They laughed at my worn coat, at the cracked leather shoes I had polished until my fingers hurt, at the way I held my twins behind me, as if my thin Omega body could shield them from a room full of alphas in tailored suits. Victor Hale stood above us with a glass of amber liquor in one hand and a smile sharp enough to cut skin. "Look at them," he said, his voice carrying beneath the crystal chandeliers. "Two little bastards with no alpha name." Evan's hand tightened around my sleeve. Leo pressed his face into my side, trembling so hard I could feel it through my ribs. I wanted to cover their ears. I wanted to burn the whole room down with nothing but the hatred in my chest. But I did what I had learned to do for 6 years. I stayed still. I swallowed the pain. I kept my voice gentle for my boys. "Don't listen," I whispered. "Look at me. Only me." Then the tall doors opened, and Damon Blackwell walked in. The air changed before he spoke. Every conversation died. Every alpha lowered his gaze. He was dressed in black, his silver cufflinks catching the stormlight from the windows, his face cold and beautiful in the cruel way winter is beautiful. Damon Blackwell, the king of the Eastern syndicates, the man whose name could empty a street faster than a siren. The man I had crossed an entire city to find 6 years ago. The man whose guards had thrown an envelope of money at my feet and told me never to speak his name again. He looked at me once, and there was no recognition in his eyes. Only irritation. Only distance. "What is this?" he asked. Victor bowed slightly, enjoying himself. "A parasite, sir. Claims protection under an old Blackwell debt. Brought 2 children to make the lie more convincing." Damon's gaze moved to Evan and Leo. For half a heartbeat, something flickered across his face, too fast for anyone else to catch. My boys had his eyes. Silver gray, storm bright, impossible to hide when they were scared. But Damon turned away from it like a man refusing to see the edge of a cliff. "Remove them," he said. 2 words. Calm. Final. My chest hollowed out. I had survived hunger, fever, eviction notices, whispers in grocery stores, doctors who asked for the father's name and looked at me like my silence was proof of shame. But hearing Damon dismiss us without even knowing what he was throwing away nearly broke something inside me. Victor reached for Leo. Evan shoved his brother behind him. "Don't touch him," my little boy said, voice shaking but brave. Victor grabbed Evan's wrist. Evan struggled, stumbled, and the old signet ring hanging around his neck slipped free from beneath his shirt. Black onyx set in silver. Damon's ring. The one I had found in my palm the morning after the Raven Hotel burned and Damon vanished from my life. The room noticed it at the same time Damon did. Then Evan's lips split against his own teeth as he tried not to cry, and one bright drop of blood fell onto the marble. Damon froze. The scent rose between us, small and young and terrified, but unmistakable beneath the rain and fear. Cedarwood. Cold smoke. Blackwell blood. Damon's pupils widened. His hand curled at his side. Victor laughed once, uncertain now. Ugly little thing bit himself. Like a stray. Damon turned his head slowly. "Say that again," he said, and the room went colder than the storm outside. I pulled both boys against me, but it was too late. Damon Blackwell had finally smelled what I had spent 6 years hiding, and the secret I carried into that hall was no longer mine alone. Damon did not move toward us at first. That was what made the silence unbearable. A man like him did not need to rush. He stood beneath the cold chandelier light, staring at the single drop of Evan's blood on the marble as if the whole city had just tilted under his feet. Every alpha in Blackwell Hall seemed to hold their breath. Victor's smile had started to fade, but pride kept him standing too close to my children. I tucked Evan's injured lip against my coat and pulled Leo behind my hip, forcing my body between them and the room. "We are leaving," I said, though my voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. Victor let out a nervous laugh. "Leaving? You walk into Blackwell territory with 2 nameless pups and stolen jewelry, and you think you get to leave." His eyes dropped to the signet ring still swinging from Evan's neck. "That ring alone is enough to prove theft." My hand closed around the ring before he could touch it. The onyx was warm from my son's skin, the silver edge worn smooth from 6 years of being hidden beneath tiny shirts and winter sweaters. "It was not stolen," I said. The words tasted like old grief. It was left behind. Damon's gaze snapped to mine. For the first time since he entered the hall, he looked at me like I was not an inconvenience, not an accusation, not some desperate Omega dragged in from the rain. He looked at me like I was a locked door, and he had just heard something breathing on the other side. "Where did you get that?" he asked. His voice was still controlled, but something dark had cracked beneath it. I should have answered. I should have told him about the Raven Hotel, about the fire alarms, about the bloodless panic in the hallway, and the way he pressed that ring into my palm before men in black coats pulled him away. I should have told him I kept it because it was the only proof that I had not imagined the one night someone powerful had looked at me like I mattered. But Leo made a tiny sound behind me, and the truth lodged in my throat. Damon heard it. His eyes dropped to my youngest son. Leo had always been softer than Evan, more sensitive to noise and scent. His small face was pale, his silver eyes wet, and the fear rolling off him carried that same impossible note Damon had already recognized. Cedarwood under rain. Cold smoke under honey. A bloodline calling to itself. Damon took one step forward. I took one step back. The movement stopped him more effectively than any weapon in the room could have. Something like pain crossed his face, so brief I almost hated myself for seeing it. "Noah," he said. My name in his mouth sounded like a memory dragged from deep water. Around us, whispers broke out like sparks. So he did remember. Not everything. Maybe not the way I remembered, but enough for my name to change the shape of the room. 6 years earlier, I had been 21 and working the midnight service corridor of the Raven Hotel, carrying towels and clean shirts to guests who never looked me in the eye. I was not supposed to be on the penthouse floor. I was not supposed to hear the argument behind Suite 1200. I was not supposed to see Damon Blackwell stumble into the hall, one hand braced against the wall, his perfect black suit torn at the sleeve, his breath uneven from whatever poison had been slipped into his drink. He had looked terrifying even then, but not cruel. Never cruel to me. When his own men failed to find him, I hid him in a staff room beneath the laundry chute and sat beside him until the shaking passed. He asked my name like it was the only real thing left in the world. By morning, he was gone. The hotel was sealed by Blackwell security, and the ring was in my hand. 8 weeks later, a doctor in a free clinic turned a small screen toward me and showed me 2 heartbeats. I tried to find Damon after that. I went to Blackwell Tower with morning sickness and a folder of medical papers clutched to my chest. The guard at the front desk looked at my worn hoodie, looked at my Omega papers, and called someone upstairs. A gray-haired man came down 20 minutes later, smiling without warmth. He told me Mr. Blackwell had no interest in hotel mistakes. He gave me $10,000 in cash and a warning to disappear before my children were born into a world that would never accept them. I disappeared because I believed him. Now Damon stood 20 feet away, looking at my sons like the past had finally become flesh in front of him. Victor tried to recover his arrogance. "Sir, whatever story this Omega is selling, we can verify it after he is removed." Damon did not look at him. "No one touches them." The command was quiet, but every guard in the hall straightened. I felt the room turn, felt power shift away from the men who had laughed and toward the 2 little boys gripping my coat. Damon's eyes returned to mine, colder now, not at me, but at the lie that had lived between us for 6 years. "Who told you I sent you away?" he asked, and the name that rose in my memory made every Blackwell guard go still. The name sat behind my teeth like a blade I had carried for 6 years but never dared to draw. Every guard in Blackwell Hall seemed to know it before I said it. I saw it in the way their shoulders stiffened, in the way their eyes flicked toward the balcony above the hall, where the oldest portraits of the Blackwell family watched us from behind dusty gold frames. Damon noticed too. His expression did not change, but the air around him sharpened. "Say it," he said. I held Evan closer, feeling his small fingers twist into my coat. Leo was pressed against my back, breathing in uneven little pulls that made my heart ache. I had imagined this moment so many times in cheap apartments and clinic waiting rooms, while measuring fever medicine with one trembling hand and counting rent money with the other. In those fantasies, I was brave. I was cold. I told Damon everything and watched regret break him. But standing in his hall with my children shaking beside me, I did not feel victorious. I felt tired down to my bones. "Silas Ward," I said. A low murmur passed through the room. Damon went completely still. Silas Ward was not just a servant. Even I knew that. He was the Blackwell family steward, the man who controlled appointments, security clearances, private messages, and the invisible doors around Damon's life. 6 years ago, he had looked at me in the lobby of Blackwell Tower like I was a stain on the floor. He told me you had already forgotten me, I said, and my voice did not break, though it wanted to. He said you called me a hotel mistake. He said if I tried to contact you again, my children would be taken before I ever saw their faces. Damon's jaw tightened. For one terrible second, I thought he would deny it because powerful men always knew how to step around inconvenient pain. Instead, he looked past me toward the guards near the west archway. Find Silas. 2 men moved at once. Victor Hale turned pale enough that even the chandelier light could not hide it. Mr. Blackwell, this is absurd. The steward has served your family for decades. You cannot entertain the word of some unregistered Omega who appears with 2 convenient children and a ring. Damon finally looked at him, and Victor stopped speaking as if the words had frozen in his throat. You have said enough. It was not loud. That made it worse. The men who had laughed at me 10 minutes earlier now stared at the floor, suddenly fascinated by their shoes, their rings, the polished seams of their black jackets. That was how power worked in Damon's world. It did not apologize. It changed direction, and everyone pretended they had always been facing that way. A woman in a charcoal suit approached carefully with a medical case in both hands. Sir, she said, if you want confirmation, I can perform a rapid lineage screen. It requires only a cheek swab from the children and from you. Results in under 15 minutes. My stomach turned. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. Damon's eyes returned to me. For the first time, there was no command in them, only a question he did not know how to ask. Noah, they are not evidence, I said. They are not property. They are not a Blackwell problem to solve in front of an audience. Evan lifted his face from my coat. His lip had stopped bleeding, but his eyes were huge and bright. Dad, he whispered, so softly I almost missed it. Is he the man from the picture? The question cracked the hall open. I had one photograph hidden in a recipe tin above our stove, a blurred security image from a newspaper article about Damon Blackwell surviving the Raven Hotel attack. I had never told the boys who he was. I only said he was someone I once knew. Damon heard every word. His face shifted, not much, but enough. The king of the Eastern Syndicates looked at my son like a man seeing the first sunrise after years underground. He lowered himself slowly, not close enough to frighten them, just enough that he was no longer towering over a 6-year-old child. What is your name? He asked. Evan looked at me first. Only when I nodded did he answer. Evan. Leo peeked from behind my coat. I am Leo, he added, small but determined. Damon swallowed once. Evan and Leo, he repeated, as if their names had weight, as if speaking them wrong would be a sin. Then the west doors opened again, and the guards returned without Silas Ward, carrying only a black leather ledger and a sealed folder stamped with the Blackwell crest. The woman in charcoal opened the folder, read the first page, and went pale. Damon rose to his full height. Read it aloud, he said. Her voice shook as she said the words that changed everything. Payment authorized 6 years ago for the removal of Noah Whitaker and unborn heirs from all Blackwell records. The hall fell silent again, but this time no one was laughing, because the lie that had buried my sons had just been found wearing the Blackwell name. The woman in charcoal did not read the line twice, but it echoed through Blackwell Hall as if the marble itself had learned to speak. Payment authorized for the removal of Noah Whitaker and unborn heirs from all Blackwell records. Unborn heirs. The words landed heavier than any insult Victor Hale had thrown at me. For 6 years, my sons had been called fatherless by strangers, inconvenient by doctors, and mistakes by people who never knew their names. Now the same room that had laughed at them stood frozen beneath the Blackwell crest, forced to hear what I had known in my bones since the first time I felt 2 tiny lives move beneath my ribs. Evan and Leo were not accidents. They were not shame. They were heirs someone had tried to erase before they ever took their first breath. Damon reached for the folder, and the woman placed it in his hand with both of hers, as if she were handing him something that might burn. He opened it slowly. Every page inside seemed to take something from his face. Cold control remained, but beneath it I saw disbelief, then fury restrained so tightly it looked like stillness. There were clinic records I had never signed, security notes from Blackwell Tower, A copy of the envelope I had been given. A photograph of me leaving the building in a gray hoodie, one hand pressed to my stomach, my face pale from fear and morning sickness. Damon stared at that picture for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes found mine, and for the first time, the great Damon Blackwell had no ready command. "I did not know," he said. The hall absorbed those 4 words in silence. I wanted them to matter. I wanted them to reach the part of me that had waited in emergency rooms alone, that had whispered stories about brave kings to 2 boys who asked why other kids had grandparents and cousins and big family dinners, while we had takeout soup and locked windows. But ignorance did not change the weight I had carried. "You did not know because people were allowed to decide what you should know," I said. "And people like me paid for it." Leo's small hand slipped into mine. Evan stood straighter, trying to look brave even with dried blood at the corner of his mouth. Damon saw it too. His gaze softened with the boys, and that gentleness hurt more than his coldness had, because it showed me the father they might have had if the truth had not been buried under money and fear. Victor stepped backward, looking for a path through the guards. "This is internal Blackwell business," he said quickly. "I had nothing to do with old paperwork. I only brought the Omega here because he owed money to my associates." Damon closed the folder. "How much?" Victor blinked. "What?" "The debt you used to drag him and my sons into this hall." "How much?" Victor's throat moved. $32,000, including interest. A few men exchanged glances. Damon did not. "Paid." Victor's relief lasted less than a second. Damon's voice remained calm. "And every contract attached to it is void. Every record. Every threat. Every claim." I felt the floor tilt under me. $32,000 had been the mountain standing between my children and safety. Damon erased it like dust from his sleeve, and somehow that made me angrier, not grateful. Because for him, rescue was a signature. For me, survival had been years of choosing which bill could wait. The woman in charcoal stepped forward again. "Sir, should I prepare the lineage screen privately?" Damon did not answer her. He looked at me. That mattered. It should not have, but it did. "Only if Noah agrees," he said. The room shifted again. An Omega's consent spoken aloud in a Mafia hall sounded almost unnatural. I looked down at Evan and Leo. Evan was staring at Damon with guarded curiosity. Leo was clutching my sleeve, but no longer hiding. They deserved truth, not whispers. They deserved proof that no one could take from them. "Privately," I said. "No audience. No guards crowding them. No one speaks to them like they are evidence." Damon nodded once. "Done." Then a new voice came from the balcony above, smooth and old and terribly familiar. "How touching," Silas Ward said, standing in the shadows with one hand resting on the rail. "But blood alone has never made anyone worthy of the Blackwell name." Damon turned toward him, and every light in the hall seemed to darken at once. Silas Ward stood above us like a ghost that had grown comfortable inside the walls of Blackwell Hall. He was older than I remembered, his silver hair combed neatly back, his black suit immaculate, his face calm in the way only powerful liars could be calm when the truth finally found them. 6 years ago, he had looked down at me in the lobby of Blackwell Tower and told me my children would be safer if they were never born with expectations. Now he looked at Evan and Leo with the same empty politeness, as if they were names on a ledger instead of 2 frightened boys holding my hands. Damon did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "Come down." Silas smiled faintly. "You always did confuse obedience with loyalty, Damon." The room tightened around that sentence. Even Victor Hale stopped breathing too loudly. Damon's guards shifted, but Damon lifted one hand, and they stilled. His eyes never left Silas. "You removed Noah from my records. You hid my children from me. I protected the family," Silas said. "You were 28, newly crowned, surrounded by enemies, and recovering from an attack that nearly ended this dynasty. An unknown Omega appeared with a convenient pregnancy and no status. I made the decision your father would have made." I felt Leo flinch at the word convenient. My anger rose so fast it almost stole my voice, but Evan spoke before I could. "We are not convenient." His small voice carried through the hall, thin but clear. "We are people." Damon's face changed then. Not dramatically, not enough for the room to call it tenderness. But I saw it. The way his attention dropped fully to Evan, the way something wounded and protective moved behind his silver eyes. Silas saw it too, and his mouth tightened. Sentiment is dangerous in a king. Damon began walking toward the staircase. Slow steps. Measured steps. Every guard moved aside as if a current had passed through them. No, Silas said, and for the first time, his calm cracked. You will listen. The Blackwell name is not a blanket you throw over every mistake that smells like you. Those boys were raised outside our laws, outside our discipline, outside our protection. Their existence makes every rival family question your control. Damon stopped at the foot of the stairs. Their existence proves my blood survived your betrayal. Silas's gaze cut to me. An old fear tried to wake in my body. And what about him? He asked. A runaway Omega with debts, forged work papers, and 2 children he kept hidden. You think he will bring dignity to this house? The insult landed, but it did not break me. Maybe because I had already lived through worse. Maybe because both my sons were watching. I lifted my chin. I kept them hidden because you taught me what this house does to people without power. For the first time, the hall did not laugh. The woman in charcoal stepped closer to me, almost as if offering silent protection. Damon looked back at me, and something unspoken passed between us. Not forgiveness, not trust, something smaller, but real. Recognition. Silas drew a breath, preparing another polished lie, but the black leather ledger in the guard's hand slipped open. A folded paper fell onto the marble and skidded near Damon's shoe. He bent and picked it up. I saw the Blackwell crest at the top. I saw the date. 6 years ago. Damon read it once, and the color drained from his face in a way I had not thought possible. What is it? I asked before I could stop myself. Damon looked at Silas. You arranged the Raven Hotel attack. The hall erupted in whispers. Silas did not deny it. He only closed his eyes briefly, like a man disappointed that a private matter had become untidy. I arranged a test, he said. A king who could be undone by one lonely Omega was not ready to rule. My heart went cold. The night I had thought Damon was abandoned, the night I had thought we were both victims of chaos, had been a trap built by the man now judging my children as unworthy. Damon climbed the first step. Silas finally stepped back. Careful, he warned. If I fall, every secret I buried for this family rises with me. Damon's voice was quiet enough to make the entire hall lean in. Then let them rise. Behind me, Leo whispered, Dad, is he going to take us away? I knelt and held both boys close, my eyes still on Damon Blackwell as he faced the man who had stolen 6 years from all of us. No, I said, though I did not yet know if it was a promise or a prayer. Not if I am still standing. Silas Ward did not run. Men like him never believed the floor could open beneath them. He stood on the balcony with one hand on the rail, surrounded by portraits of dead Blackwell kings, and looked at Damon as if he were still the young heir whose schedule he controlled, whose messages he filtered, whose grief he decided was too inconvenient to hear. You think exposing me makes you stronger? Silas said. It makes you vulnerable. Every family in this city will hear that your bloodline was hidden by your own house. They will smell weakness before sunrise. Damon climbed another step. Let them. The answer moved through the hall like a match dropped into oil. For years, I had heard stories about Damon Blackwell, as if he were a storm people prayed would pass over their roofs. Ruthless, untouchable, a king made of iron and silence. But in that moment, he looked less like a monster and more like a man choosing which part of himself had to die so his children could live honestly. Silas turned his attention back to my sons. And what future do you imagine for them? Birthday parties and school pictures? Little league games in the suburbs? They carry Blackwell blood. That means enemies, obligations, discipline. You cannot soften a dynasty because 2 children have frightened eyes. Evan's grip tightened around my hand. Leo leaned into my side. I felt the anger in my chest settle into something steadier than rage. They also carry my blood, I said. My voice was quiet, but it reached the balcony. That means they know how to survive without a crown, without bodyguards, without anyone kneeling when they enter a room. You call that weakness because you have never had to be brave without permission. The hall went still again, but this time the silence belonged to me. Damon stopped on the stairs and looked back. Not to command me, not to rescue me, to listen. Silas's face hardened. You are sentimental. I am their father, I said. That is stronger. The woman in charcoal, whose name I still did not know, stepped forward with the medical case. Mr. Blackwell, she said carefully, there is another document in the folder. A custody transfer drafted but never filed. It names Silas Ward as temporary guardian over any Blackwell heir born outside formal union, pending evaluation. My stomach dropped. The meaning arrived before the words settled. Silas had not only erased my sons. He had prepared a way to take them if they ever became useful. Damon's expression turned empty in the most frightening way, not because he lost feeling, but because he was containing too much of it. How long? He asked. The woman checked the page. It was renewed every year. Every year. While I walked Evan to public kindergarten with a backpack patched twice at the seam. While Leo cried through winter fevers in our one-bedroom apartment above the closed tailor shop. While I worked double shifts and told my boys that someday things would get easier. Every year, somewhere in a Blackwell archive, a stranger had kept a legal door open to steal them from me. My knees weakened, but I did not fall. Damon came down from the stairs instead of going up. He crossed the hall until he stood several feet from us, close enough that I could see the faint tremor in his hand before he folded it into a fist. "Noah," he said, and there was a gentleness in his voice that made the room feel unreal. "No one is taking them from you. Not me. Not this family. Not any law Silas bought in the dark." I wanted to believe him. I hated how badly I wanted to believe him. "Promises from Blackwell men have cost me enough," I said. Pain flashed across his face, and this time he did not hide it. "Then I will not ask you to trust a promise." He turned to the hall. "Bring the city registrar. Bring an independent family court advocate. Bring a pediatric doctor of Noah's choosing. Everything happens in the open, and nothing happens without his consent." The words landed like a public oath. Men who had spent their lives hiding truth behind polished doors now had to watch their king drag it into the light. Silas's voice cut down from the balcony, colder than before. "You would place an unclaimed Omega above your own house." Damon looked up at him. "No," he said. "I am placing my son's father beside them, where he should have been from the beginning." Leo looked up at me. "Does that mean we can go home?" The simple question nearly broke me. Because home was not a palace, not a hall, not a name carved into silver. Home was the small apartment with the humming refrigerator, the dinosaur stickers on the window, the mattress where the boys slept curled against me during thunderstorms. I kissed the top of his hair. "Yes," I whispered. "We are going home." Damon heard it, and something in his eyes tightened, because he understood what I meant. Not his home. Mine. Before he could speak, the lights above us flickered once. The great doors at the far end of Blackwell Hall opened without permission, and a group of men in gray coats stepped inside, carrying official seals from the city. Silas smiled from the balcony at last. "Good," he said softly. "The court has arrived." The men in gray coats did not look like mafia soldiers, and somehow that made them more frightening. They entered Blackwell Hall with city seals on their briefcases, rain shining on their shoulders, and the blank expressions of people who believed paperwork could make cruelty look civilized. At their center was a thin man with gold-rimmed glasses and a voice polished smooth by years of courtrooms. "By emergency petition filed under City Family Protection Statute, we are here to assess the welfare status of 2 minor children believed to be connected to an active criminal estate." My arms tightened around Evan and Leo before I could stop myself. Criminal estate. Welfare status. Minor children. The words sounded clean, but I heard what lived underneath them. Removal. Evaluation. A locked door I would not be allowed to open. Damon turned slowly towards Silas on the balcony. "You filed this." Silas looked almost pleased. "I filed many things. That is what kept this family alive while you chased ghosts and called it leadership." The man with glasses cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwell, this is not optional. Until parentage, residency, and risk exposure are properly evaluated, the children may be placed in temporary protective custody." Leo made a small panicked sound. Evan stepped in front of him again, 6 years old and already trying to be a wall. Something inside me rose with such force that fear had to move aside. "No," I said. The man glanced at me as if only now remembering I had a voice. "Mr. Whitaker, I understand this is emotional." "You do not understand anything," I said. "You did not hold them when they had the flu and I had $12 until payday. You did not sit with Evan through speech therapy when he stopped talking because a teacher called him unstable. You did not carry Leo 3 blocks in the snow because the bus line shut down and the clinic would not reschedule. You do not get to walk into a room where my children have already been humiliated and call taking them away protection. No one moved. My voice shook by the end, but it did not break. The woman in charcoal stepped closer to me, still holding the medical case. For the record, she said, her tone careful but firm. The children show no visible signs of neglect. They are alert, bonded to their custodial parent, and currently distressed by the environment created here. The man with glasses frowned. And you are? Dr. Amelia Rhodes, licensed pediatric geneticist and medical consultant to the Blackwell estate. Estate consultants are not independent. No, she said. But frightened children are still frightened children, even when adults are busy pretending this is procedure. Damon looked at her with something like approval, then turned to the officials. You will not remove them. The man straightened. Mr. Blackwell, your influence does not override a court order. No, Damon said. But the order is built on a false petition filed by a man currently implicated in document fraud, coercion, and concealment of heirs. That makes your emergency claim contaminated before it reaches the table. Silas's smile thinned. Careful, Damon. You are still speaking in front of witnesses. Damon's eyes did not leave the officials. Good. Then he did something no one expected. He removed the Blackwell signet from his own hand and placed it on the marble floor between us, not as a threat, but as surrender. The room seemed to inhale. Record this, he said. Several phones lifted at once, though no one dared make a sound. I, Damon Blackwell, acknowledge Noah Whitaker as the sole custodial parent of Evan Whitaker and Leo Whitaker until he chooses otherwise. I claim biological responsibility, not ownership. I claim debt, not authority. Any protection given by my name is his to accept or refuse. My breath caught. For 6 years, every powerful person I met had tried to turn my children into leverage. Damon had just taken the first piece of power he had over us and set it down where everyone could see it. The man with glasses hesitated. Silas stepped down one stair from the balcony, his face no longer calm. That statement weakens every succession law this house has. Damon finally looked up at him. Then the laws were already weak. Evan tugged gently on my sleeve. Dad, he whispered, is he helping us? I looked at Damon, at the ring on the floor, at the stormlight moving across the black marble like water over a grave. I did not know how to answer without lying. Before I could speak, Dr. Rhodes opened the sealed folder again. There is one more issue, she said, and her voice had gone quiet. The emergency petition includes a claim that one twin carries an unstable alpha marker and may be dangerous without Blackwell custody. Leo went still against me. Evan's face drained of color. Damon's expression darkened. Which twin? Dr. Rhodes swallowed. Leo. Every eye turned toward my smallest child, and for the first time all night, Leo let go of my coat and stepped backward as if he believed the room had finally found a reason to fear him. Leo stepped back only 2 feet, but it felt like watching my child drift toward the edge of a cliff. The officials stared at him as if a line in a petition had turned a trembling 6-year-old into a public threat. Evan moved instantly, planting himself beside his brother with his small chin lifted. He is not dangerous, Evan said. He cries when movies have sad dogs. A few people looked away, ashamed by the simplicity of it. Leo's lower lip shook. Dad, he whispered, am I bad? The question nearly took the air out of my chest. I crossed the space between us and knelt before him, ignoring the officials, the guards, the chandeliers, the whole cold machinery of Blackwell power. I placed both hands gently on his shoulders. No, baby. You are scared. That is all. His silver eyes searched mine like he needed me to anchor the world in place. But they said my marker is wrong. They are wrong, I said. People use big words when they want to make fear sound smart. Damon stood several steps away, his face pale with controlled anger, but he did not come closer until Leo looked toward him. That mattered. He waited for a child's permission in a room where every adult had been trying to take it away. Dr. Rhodes opened her medical case on a side table and removed a small scanner. May I explain something? She asked me first, not Damon. I nodded, keeping one hand around Leo's. She turned so the officials could hear. An alpha marker in a child is not a diagnosis of danger. It can indicate sensitivity to stress, scent response, and early dominance traits, but those are managed through stable care, not removal. The petition exaggerates medical language to justify custody interference. The man with glasses adjusted his papers. We have expert statements saying otherwise. From whom? Damon asked. Dr. Rhodes looked at the folder. A physician named Harold Vance. Damon's expression hardened. He lost his medical license in New Jersey 4 years ago. For the first time, the official's confidence faltered. Silas descended another step from the balcony, his voice smooth again. Technicalities do not change the issue. The child reacted strongly in a volatile environment. I stood, drawing Leo with me. Because adults made it volatile. Damon's gaze flicked to me, and something close to respect moved there. Then Leo did the smallest, bravest thing I had ever seen. He let go of my hand and took one step toward Damon. The whole hall watched as my youngest son looked up at the most feared man in the city and asked, "Do I smell like you?" Damon seemed to forget how to breathe. He lowered himself to one knee, slow enough not to startle him. "Yes," he said, his voice rougher than before. "You do." Leo swallowed. "Is that why they are scared?" Damon glanced at the men in gray coats, at Silas, at Victor, at every person who had turned a child's blood into a legal argument. "No," he said. "They are scared because they thought your name could be used against you." They were wrong. Evan came to stand beside Leo, still wary, still protective. "We already have a name," he said. "Whitaker." Damon looked at me when he answered. "It is a good name." Those 5 words struck deeper than any grand apology could have. Not because they fixed anything, but because he did not try to replace what I had built. He did not call my name temporary. He did not call my years alone an unfortunate gap. He looked at my sons and honored the only family they had ever known. Dr. Rhodes ran the scanner only after Leo agreed, and only while I held his hand. The device made a soft chime. She read the results once, then again, and her voice steadied. No instability. Elevated stress response consistent with fear. Strong hereditary match to the Blackwell paternal line. Strong hereditary match to Noah Whitaker as birth parent. No medical basis for removal. The official with glasses closed his briefcase more slowly than he had opened it. Pending further review, protective custody will not proceed tonight. The words should have brought relief. Instead, I felt the exhaustion hit me so hard I almost swayed. Damon noticed, but did not reach for me. He signaled to Dr. Rhodes, who guided the boys and me toward a quieter side chamber with warm lights and a couch instead of marble judgment. At the threshold, Leo turned back to Damon. "Are you coming?" Damon looked at me, not the child, because he understood the answer was mine to give. My throat tightened. I wanted to say no. I wanted to keep the door closed forever. But Evan was watching him too, and Leo had asked. "For 5 minutes," I said. Damon nodded, like 5 minutes was more mercy than he deserved. But before he could follow us, Silas's voice cut across the hall one last time. "Enjoy your reunion while you can. The boys may have his blood, Noah, but one of them carries the old Blackwell mark, and that does not belong to any court." Dr. Rhodes went still beside me. Damon turned sharply. "What mark?" Silas smiled, and his eyes fixed on Leo. "The one behind his ear." The mention of the mark behind Leo's ear changed the room more than any blood test had. Dr. Rhodes turned to me first, her face careful, her voice low. "May I look?" Leo hit against my side, and I stroked his hair until his breathing slowed. "Only if you want to," I told him. He glanced at Damon, then at Evan, and finally gave a tiny nod. I lifted the soft curl behind his left ear. There it was, the little crescent-shaped birthmark I had kissed 1,000 times without knowing it carried a history older than any mansion, any syndicate, any law. Damon's face went still when he saw it. Not cold this time. "Reverent. My mother had that mark," he said. "So did her father." Silas stepped down to the final stair, triumph sharpening his smile. "The old Blackwell mark appears only in a ruling heir. Not merely blood. Succession. That child belongs to the house." Leo made a frightened sound, and something inside me became calm in a way fear could not touch. I stood between my son and the entire Blackwell dynasty. "No," I said. "He belongs to himself." Damon looked at Silas, then at the portraits above us, at the dead kings who had ruled from frames and shadows. For a heartbeat, I thought he would hesitate. Bloodlines were the religion of his world. Legacy was the language men like him were raised to obey. Then Damon walked back to the center of the hall and picked up his signet ring from the marble floor. He held it in his palm, the black onyx catching the light. "For generations, this ring decided who mattered," he said. "Tonight, that ends." Silas's face lost its color. "You cannot rewrite the house in a moment of guilt." No, Damon said. I am rewriting it in a moment of truth. He turned to the officials, the guards, the doctors, and the men who had once laughed at my children. Record this. Evan Whitaker and Leo Whitaker are my sons, but they will not be claimed like property. Their legal name, residence, schooling, and future will be decided with Noah Whitaker, their father, and only with his consent. The Blackwell estate will provide protection, education, medical care, and restitution for every year stolen from them, without custody demands attached. The man with glasses looked stunned. That will require formal filing. File it before midnight, Damon said. Then he looked at Victor Hale. And anyone who used debt, rumor, or rank to shame them will answer in court, not in shadows. Victor lowered his eyes. Silas tried to speak again, but Dr. Rhodes raised the ledger and said quietly, "There is enough here for a public investigation." For the first time since I had known him, Silas Ward had no door left to close. He was escorted from the hall, without spectacle, without the grand ending he thought he deserved, just an old man walking away under the weight of records he had trusted to stay buried. When the doors shut behind him, the silence felt different. Not empty, clean. Damon approached us slowly, stopping several feet away. "Noah," he said, "I cannot give back 6 years." My throat tightened. "No, you cannot. But I can spend the rest of my life making sure no one takes another day from you." Evan studied him with serious eyes. "Do we have to live here?" Damon looked at me before answering. "No," Leo peeked up. "Can you visit our apartment?" Damon's voice softened. "Only if your dad says I can." Both boys looked at me. I thought of our small kitchen, the dinosaur stickers on the window, the bills stacked beside the microwave, the life I built with tired hands and stubborn love. Then I looked at Damon Blackwell, no longer a king demanding entry, but a father waiting outside a door he knew he had not earned the right to open. "You can come for dinner on Sunday," I said. 5 o'clock. No guards in the hallway. No gifts bigger than a backpack. And if the boys say stop, you stop. Damon nodded as if I had handed him the world. 3 months later, Blackwell Hall no longer held public judgments. Damon turned it into a legal aid foundation for omegas and children trapped by debt contracts. Victor's associates vanished into ordinary courtrooms, where paperwork finally worked for the people it used to threaten. Silas's crimes filled headlines for weeks, but I stopped reading after the first one. Our life did not become a fairy tale. Trust came slowly, in small honest pieces. Damon learned the boys liked blueberry pancakes, space documentaries, and sleeping with the hall light on during storms. He learned that apologies meant nothing without showing up. And every Sunday at 5 o'clock, he knocked on our apartment door like a man asking permission to become family. 1 year later, Evan and Leo stood in a sunny park wearing matching baseball caps, laughing as Damon taught them how to throw without worrying where the ball landed. I watched from a picnic blanket, the spring wind warm against my face. Damon sat beside me after a while, leaving careful space between us, the way he always did now. "Thank you," he said. I looked at our sons, bright and loud and free. "For what?" "For letting me know them." I smiled, not because the past no longer hurt, but because it no longer owned us. "Keep earning it," I said. Damon looked at the boys, then back at me. Every day. And for the first time in 6 years, when my children ran toward us calling for both their fathers, no one in the world had the power to make them feel unwanted again.